Welcome, everyone, to our fun little study group for PP 5340, Introduction to Public Policy and Management. Today, we're diving right into Chapter 6 of our required text, Race and Social Equity, a Nervous Area of Government. We're going to really unpack the Wisconsin experience.
This quote, it just perfectly captures the core challenge we're exploring today, doesn't it? Why is it so incredibly difficult for government agencies to look inward at racial disparities? And more importantly, how can they actually do it effectively? Okay, so here's our roadmap for breaking this down. First, we'll get into what makes this such a nervous area. Then we'll jump into the Wisconsin case study, see how they built a very difficult conversation, pull out some key lessons, and finally look at the model for good government that came out of it all. Right, first things first, let's establish the stakes. This isn't just about agencies trying to be nice. They are literally required by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to self-assess for racial disparities. But as you're about to see, it's so much more than just a simple box-ticking exercise. The big goal here is something called social equity. For the longest time, public administration had three main pillars: keep it cheap, make it fast, and make sure it works. Economy, efficiency, effectiveness. But social equity adds that crucial fourth pillar, making it fair for everyone. It's absolutely fundamental to the idea of good government. And this is where we really hit the nerve. See, comparing agency performance by, say, region or family type, that's usually just a straightforward, data-driven task. But the second you introduce race into the analysis, the whole conversation changes. All of a sudden, you're dealing with deep emotional and historical context, and that can make people incredibly defensive and uncomfortable really fast. Which brings us right to our case study in Wisconsin. Back in the early 2000s, their welfare program, which was called W-2, became the absolute center of a huge controversy over these exact kinds of disparities. And wow, this chart just lays it all out. External researchers found these incredibly stark numbers. In their welfare program, a sanction meant your financial support got cut, and the data clearly showed that Black and Hispanic recipients were getting sanctioned at almost double the rate of white recipients. Those are figures you just can't ignore. So this wasn't happening in a vacuum. You had a legal complaint from the ACLU and the NAACP, and on top of that, a really damning report from the state's own auditors. It was like a perfect storm of events that made it impossible for the state agency to look away any longer. They had to act. So let's see how this builds. Faced with this massive challenge, the Division of Workforce Solutions didn't just go analyze the data behind closed doors. Nope. They created a really diverse steering committee to guide the entire process, right out in the open. And the key here was who they put at the table. This wasn't just a bunch of insiders. They brought in W-2 administrators, sure, but also the very client advocacy groups that were suing them, other state officials, and outside academics. Talk about a mix of perspectives. As you can probably imagine, the conversations got tense immediately. A lot of the agency folks felt like they were being personally attacked. Their gut reaction was, hey, are you calling me a racist? And that defensiveness, as this committee member points out, became a huge wall they had to get over. So they had to reframe the entire discussion, and this was the crucial shift. The group agreed, okay, this isn't about finding racists. This is about finding the structures, the policies, the procedures that are leading to discriminatory outcomes, regardless of anyone's personal intent. Shifting from intent to impact, that was the game changer. What's so fascinating is that the year-long process itself revealed these incredibly powerful lessons that you could argue are even more important than the final data they came up with. Let's dig into the third key finding that came out of the interviews they did with everyone involved. It turns out, having those strong, respected people from every single sector, the advocates, the agency staff, the researchers, was absolutely essential. It gave the whole study credibility. Nobody could come back later and say the process was biased, which made the final findings way harder to just brush aside. Okay, now for the sixth finding. This one addressed a huge, very practical problem that they ran into. So when it came time to actually make recommendations, things got sticky. It was really hard for people to evaluate an idea without being influenced by who it came from. You might dismiss a great idea just because it came from an advocate you don't trust, or maybe you'd support a weak idea because your boss suggested it. Their solution was just brilliant. They brought in a neutral facilitator and used special software that let everyone type in their ideas anonymously. This totally leveled the playing field. It quieted down the loudest people in the room, and it forced everyone to focus on the quality of the ideas themselves, not on who said them. So, what's the ultimate takeaway for us in this public policy class? Well, the Wisconsin experience provides a real, replicable model for pretty much any agency that wants to do this work. And this is it. This 6-step process basically distills everything they learned into a framework you can actually use. It starts with agency willingness. You got to want to look. Then you need strong leadership. You bring in diverse experts. You agree on the method before you even start. That way, everyone has to accept the results. And finally, you use smart tools to build consensus on what to do next. Ultimately, it all comes back to the culture of the organization, right? As one of the Wisconsin leaders put it, you just can't do this work in a no bad news environment. The goal isn't to avoid bad news. The goal is to improve the integrity of your services, and that means you have to be willing to confront some really uncomfortable truths. And that leaves us with a final, really important thought to chew on. This process is a powerful tool for finding the truth, but that journey from discovery to actually acting on it, well, that's the next critical challenge for public administration. Thanks for joining the study session.